am at the Old Dominion Endurance Ride and Ride and Tie, and I have with me Rick Noer. And Rick has the distinction, maybe not the only person, but the only one I'm aware of, who has moved from the west to the east and has done Ride and Tie in both west and east. Of course, we have lots of folks that have done both, but Rick has lived in both sections, and so I thought it would be fun to talk to him a little bit about both west and east. So Rick, welcome to Tongue Tied Interviews.
Thank you, Courtney.
So first, let's just start a little bit about your western experience, how you got involved in Ride and Tie. It's a story or two about out west.
Okay, well, the way I got involved with two people, Tom Day and Carol Rupert, came to a running club meeting, Snail's Pace Running Club, and asked for volunteers to join Ride and Tie and explained what it was. And a bunch of us raised our hands, and eventually only two of us took part. One was an ex-jockey, Mike Whalen, who some of you have met, and myself. And that's how I got involved. They volunteered to get us some riding experience, and so that's how it started.
And what year was that, probably?
2003.
Okay. And you were living where then?
Fountain Valley, California.
All right. So tell me about your first Ride and Tie experience.
Well, the very first one, I had actually pulled a muscle in my leg before the race, and unfortunately during the race I couldn't get on the horse. So my first race kind of was a failure. My second race was the championship up at Truckee, and that was a little bit different, although my teammate Melanie Ware and I finished last. She let me use her horse all the time. I was riding twice a week and getting lessons and getting on a horse as much as I could.
And so how many championships have you done?
I think 15.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. And most of those are out west.
Yes.
But a few in the east too, right?
Correct.
All right. So other stories, particularly when you were in the west, any good, great, funny or memorable stories you have for us?
Well, like I said, my first Ride and Tie, we finished last, dead last. But the experience of what goes wrong on the trail, which kind of happened a couple other times, where Melanie and I were up at Mount Adams using a different horse, and I think at the first tie, the horse broke the halter. And I don't know a whole lot about halters, but we had straw rope or string in the saddlebag, so we reconstructed a halter because the horse wasn't using a bit. By the time we'd done that, we were dead last, and we actually finished 11th or 13th. I can't remember what it was, but we had a good day. It just those kind of things happen. As I found out, there's things that happen that you just can't predict.
Yeah, well, and part of it is really figuring out, like you say, take some straw halter or string or hay string or whatever, and figure out how to fix whatever it is on the trail. Yep. Other good stories from then.
Well, a good friend of mine who has done ultras, a little bit older than I am, still doing ultras. He decided he wanted to do Ride and Tie one time. Mm-hmm. So, and he's writing a book. Eventually it'll come out, and there'll be a chapter about Ride and Tie, but he runs in sandals, and I've adopted using those sandals too at times. So he decided he was going to do Ride and Tie, and he had just finished a 50 or a 50K a couple of weeks before and said, "Rick, I'm in great shape, not a problem." Well, we got to the day of the race. He'd never ridden a horse, so my good friend Mike Whalen got him on the horse. It was a good horse, but he got him on the horse. He couldn't, and I found out during the day, a walk was as fast as he went. So, again, it was a learning experience. The funny thing was, he told me a couple days after we did the race, he said he could barely walk, and all we did was walk on the horse.
That can be worse sometimes, actually.
Yeah.
So another thing I just realized, the distinctive I think you've never owned a horse, have you?
No. Once I got involved with Ride and Tie, I made that decision.
Yeah.
There are enough people that will let you ride their horses and welcome that, as I've done out west and I do on the East Coast. I have options, and it's good. I've got a granddaughter involved who's probably a better rider than I am at 13, and so I ride weekly.
Wonderful. Yep. That's great. And that is an encouragement for folks that don't have horses, know that you don't have to have a horse, and so you can do Ride and Die. There's enough of us that are looking for partners or willing to loan their horses out or whatever, right?
Oh, yeah. I can tell you, too, Courtney, the first year I rode, kind of scared to death going to the races, and I didn't go, and any of the training rides I did with someone or by myself never went faster than a trot. I was scared to death to go any faster than a trot. And I told that to Ted Ruprecht, who is kind of an institution in Ride and Tie. And it turns out he and I started Ride and Tie in our early 50s, both of us. And he said, Rick, that's okay. Have a good time. And I was really self-conscious about getting on the horse in front of other people, falling off. I mean, I've had experiences. Usually I don't fall off unless I'm actually in front of people.
Yeah.
I don't fall off without a crowd.
Without a crowd.
Yeah. And Ted gave me the confidence, though, that's saying, you just go out and have a good time and just keep riding.
Good.
And it really, really helped. Made a difference. So
have you moved from the trot to the canter on the trail?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And actually, a canter is nicer.
Can be smoother, yeah.
Yes,
for
it can
sure.
be.
Absolutely.
But that was a growing experience, because when I was taking lessons from a friend of mine, Kat Swigert, who I'd been introduced by Ride and Tie people out west, she eventually asked me during one of the lessons, what do you want to learn to do? I said, first thing I want to learn to do is how to rest on the horse, because if we did a 35-mile race, I was running 35 miles on the ground or in the saddle. Right. And the other thing was not to hurt the horse. I've seen, and I watch old westerns, see how people ride, but I watch people ride, and I pick up stuff all the time on how to ride with the horse. I didn't understand that concept for a while, and I know there's people out there who are nodding their heads, and maybe they think I still don't understand. But it's sometimes hard to ride with the horse, and I can tell when I am doing that now. It was helpful, though, to have someone teach me, knowing that's what I wanted to learn.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you moved to the East Coast when?
June of 2016.
Okay. Had you done Ride and Tie on the East before them?
Once. I came out here to visit. We came out to visit our daughter, whose husband was in the Navy. He's retired now, but lived in Chesapeake, Virginia. And I saw that this race was going on, and so I drove up and did it with Carrie.
All right, Carrie Barris, yeah, super.
Carrie Barris and I did a race together on Shawnee. I got tossed on Shawnee, but landed in nice leaves and everything was okay. It was a good experience.
Super.
It was a good time. Carrie treated me well. Mary was there with her horse, so everything, as far as I was concerned, it was a good day.
And that's another great example, because back then Carrie didn't have a horse either, so y'all were having to borrow. And as a wonderful kind of correlated all the whole thing, just today Shawnee was presented with her Horse of Distinction award, and so she's now one of the riding horses of distinction. And part of the way you get that is allowing new teams. The fastest way you can get it is to let more and more new teams. If a team that's never been together before competes in the horse, that's the best way to get points to become a horse of distinction, which is perfect for that, because that does help us grow the sport, and we're so thankful for the horses for that. So cool.
My granddaughter and I actually did our first Ride and Tie in Smithfield on Shawnee.
Okay, I've ridden Shawnee and won as well. So actually a couple times I guess I've ridden her. So yeah, cool.
And that's just being grateful for people allowing me to use their horses and being confident enough that I'm going to treat them well. And that's a big deal to me, because I think if you treat the horses well, it's returned, but people will trust you to let them use their animals again. And that's really important.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the differences that you've just have seen between East Coast Ride and Tie and West Coast Ride and Tie, if there are any. I've never been to a West Coast race, so tell me.
Well, I think the trails aren't quite as rocky as they are here.
In the West, right.
Certainly there's the steep climbs, there's mountains. Sometimes we do them in the high desert, but there's still mountains in the high desert. It can be very hot. It can be very cold. I've done races out there in sleet, 30 degrees. I've done races when it's been 100 degrees, but not as humid as it gets here. Differences more are with humidity, which sometimes can get pretty high in Northern California at times, but not quite like it is out here.
I remember when one of the world championships was here at Old Dominion, teasing Ganella Pratt and Mike Whelan about, have you seen any rocks? And they're like, oh my goodness. So yeah,
it's a whole different thing. It's more technical, but maybe there's a difference in style. I'm not quite sure, but to me, people are still looking out for their horse. They're watching where their feet are landing. They're making sure that they're safe. They're doing the best job they can with the trails, but they can be different. I think there is more of a challenge out west now with getting property to ride on. Here, there's more permanent property to ride on, and I didn't know that was even an issue before. But I think that's something that probably we're running into out west. I'm not quite sure how bad it is, but there can be, I think, challenges to doing that, because the people who put on the races out west are very diligent about talking to the owners and what the property is like. So,
okay. So this may be before your time. I know way back when Ride Tie first started, the starts of races were just wild, with just people, 200 horses charging across the field. Even today, or most recently when you were in the West, are the starts a little faster in the West than they are in the East, or is it about the same?
I think it's about the same, but there are some challenges where you have single track starts. That's happening.
Here instead of there, or both?
I think both.
Okay.
I think I experienced it more on the West Coast, that we just kind of started out on a single track, which is kind of maddening sometimes. But, and horses are horses; they're going to do what they do at the start. And, but in most cases, everybody controls their animals pretty good.
Yeah. So tell me a memorable East Coast story.
Well, I think when I was out here, after we'd moved out here in 2017, I had an opportunity to ride with a person that a lot of people knew. I'd never met him.
Oh, yes.
And so the person who was letting me kind of ride, or she had called me about this person and said, do you want to do a ride and tie? Because somebody had contacted her. This guy's partner had gotten injured and could not do the ride and tie. So I said, sure, I'll do it. I've done it with a lot of new people. And she said, well, his name's Chris McDougald. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know that he'd written Born to Run. So I was driving up, or I was riding with the Venables to the race at Fort Valley. And I told them on the way that I was going to be doing a race with Chris McDougald, and I showed them the book, and they immediately, I wouldn't say hit me hard, I would say more like, love tap, why didn't you tell me? Because I said, well, I'm old, slow, and short. I don't know if he's going to want to do this, because he's about a foot taller than me. But we did do the Fort Valley race. The horse that we borrowed from a friend of mine, later became a friend of mine, Karen Schlater, in Palmyra, who I still go and ride her horses every year. She provided the horse, and the horse had never done a ride and tie until that day.
And so Chris had never done a ride and tie before that day.
Chris had never done a ride and tie, and that horse was so good. Chris would be kind of getting on, like going to the side, which some people do, and that horse just stood there and let him, size it up back, get back and straighten up. And we put double stirrups on him, and not every horse will handle double stirrups very well. But Hank, horse's name, he did it. We did that race, and then I got Hank in shape for the championships, and we did the championships here at Orkney Springs that year, and did okay.
Yeah.
It was an experience, though, doing a race that long with double stirrups. For me, it was fantastic. As some people know, I'm kind of challenged height-wise, so I didn't really have to. I could get on from level ground, which is a big deal for me. And Chris, it was funny, as we were coming in up the road that we have here, Chris was walking, and I said, Chris, you got to get on the horse. You got to get this picture. If you're going to put this in a book, you got to be on the horse. I said, Rick, I can't get on. I'm too sore. I said, you got to get on for the last mile. He got on, rode a big smile on his face, and it was a success. We did okay. I think we finished middle of the pack or top third, and it was great.
That is great. And I guess this is a confession. Both of those races I was in too, and I had the great opportunity to tease Chris McDougald and say, the joy of my life is that I beat you in a race. And he just says, well, I'm just Shrek. He says, I'm just big old things. That's no an accomplishment. Any other stories you think about, east or west, memorable events?
Well, I think the one race we did up in at Mount Adams that Melanie Ware and I did, where I told you about the bridle breaking or the halter breaking, and then we retied it. Well, the truth of the matter is we finished, I think, 11th or 12th, and just by being consistent, and that's kind of was a lesson for me as far as consistency in the race. It's and I learned that again going in limited distance with Tom Guy. We would go out dead last in a limited distance race and then finish in the top 5. So I got a real chance to see how you can treat your horse, both there and here. I've had that experience in both places.
Neat. I think you told me you looked up your stats, and I forgot to do that. How many miles do you have? Did you look it up? Do you remember, roughly?
I think now, total, it's around 2,000.
Okay.
If I combine both of them, it might be a little bit more than that.
Okay, and when you say both of them, you've really kind of moved into equathon of late, right?
I have.
Is that intentional, or just kind of happened?
I think it's a good thing when you get a little slower. It's okay. I get to ride a horse, and I'm still running. I get to do things that I like to do. If I get to do some riding ties, that's fine. But I'm still on a horse, and I'm still enjoying it. And I have a lot of good friends who encourage me all the time.
So there may be some people watching who don't know what equathon is. So why don't you tell me just brief, what is equathon?
Well, the equathon is, there's a distance that you ride. It could be 6, 12, 20 miles, and then the horse is vetted out, and then the runner goes out for a determined distance of 6, 10, 12, 15 miles. It can be the same person riding the horse, or you can have a partner riding the horse, or running and going out. So you can do it as a team or by yourself. And I've been doing most of them by myself, and that's okay.
Yep. And so today you did what?
A 12-mile ride and a 6-mile
Okay, there
run.
we go. Yeah. Good.
Walk.
Good. If somebody were thinking about wanting to get involved in Ride Tie, whether on the East or the West Coast, what would be some advice that you give them?
Well, there's a list of mentors on the Ride Tie webpage, which is really good, and they can direct you to people in the area that can help you. I think it's good if you come out and watch one, or you can find someone where you can practice just a couple of miles to see how you tie a horse. There's so many things involved with tying a horse on a hill and around ant hills out here, the slope of the hill. There's all sorts of things, fences and whatever. So I think it's good to use the mentorship, or if you just know someone who's done it and you want to get into it. But the mentorship program seems to work out well. Phone calls are made and then redirected to people that can help them.
So we talked a while ago about a couple of folks that had never done Ride Tie, and their first experience was at the race. Was that yours, or did you do some practice ahead of time way back when?
I did some practice.
Okay.
I did some practice. Although it's not the same.
The
start is not the same.
Yeah.
Even you talked about in the early days where they had 160, maybe 200 plus horses, and then that number of runners. Well, even with 40 or 50, that's a pretty large number to have on the trail at the same time.
No.
So it's a matter of just kind of being careful, and the runners start behind the horses generally, and things kind of space out, and everybody finds their place in the race.
Good. Well, Rick, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And are you going out tomorrow?
No, I'm not. I get to crew.
You're done. You get to crew, and that can be a lot of fun too, can't it?
It's a learning experience, and I like doing it because these are the people that have helped me get into the sport or let me use their horses, so this is fine.
Super. Okay, well, thank you for being on Tongue Tied.
Thank you.
All right.